The goddess Alindra stood at the edge of the void, her silver eyes scanning the burning galaxies below. The war had consumed everything. For 10,000 years, the eternal races had fought against the Void Horde, creatures born from the dark spaces between stars. They devoured worlds, swallowed suns, and left nothing but emptiness in their wake. The Eternals were losing. Alindra was the last of the Watcher gods, being so ancient that even time forgot their origins. She had seen empires rise and crumble into cosmic dust. She had witnessed the birth of stars and mourned their deaths, but she had never seen anything like this war. The Void Horde was endless. For every creature destroyed, 100 more crawled from the darkness. The Council of Eternals had gathered in desperation. They sat in their crystal chambers, their forms shifting between light and shadow, debating the same useless strategies they had debated for millennia. "We need more soldiers," said Orvath, the war god of the Kelthani Empire. His body was made of living fire, and his voice cracked like thunder. "Send the immortal legions to the front lines." "The immortal legions are broken," replied Selenith, queen of the Her form was pure light, beautiful and cold. "We have lost 3 billion soldiers in the last cycle alone. The void consumes them faster than we can replace them." Alindra listened in silence. She had watched these same beings argue for centuries. They were powerful beyond imagination, capable of reshaping reality with a thought. Yet they had failed to end this war. Their armies were the strongest in existence. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their magic could bend the laws of physics. None of it mattered. The Void Horde did not fight like normal enemies. They did not fear death because they were already dead. They did not need supplies because they fed on the energy of destroyed worlds. They did not have leaders to assassinate or homeworlds to conquer. They were simply hunger given form, an endless appetite that consumed everything it touched. "There is another way," Alindra said quietly. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to her. "The ancient prophecy speaks of a champion," she continued, "a mortal chosen by a Watcher god, one who carries the flame of their dying race within their soul, one who can do what the Eternals cannot." Orvath laughed, flames erupting from his throat. "A mortal? You want us to pin our hopes on some weak creature with a lifespan of mere centuries? The insects die if they fall from a height. They cannot survive the vacuum of space. They have no magic, no immortality, no power worth mentioning." "That is precisely why they might succeed," Alindra replied calmly. Selenith leaned forward, her light dimming with curiosity. "Explain." Alindra waved her hand, and an image appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. "Earth," she said. "The humans call it home. They are young, barely evolved beyond their primitive origins. They live for less than 100 rotations of their planet. They are fragile, emotional, and constantly fighting among themselves." "You prove our point," Orvath interrupted. "Why would such creatures be of any use?" "Because they have something we lost long ago," Alindra answered. "They have limits. They know they will die. Every moment of their existence is precious because it could be their last. This knowledge does not make them weak. It makes them desperate. It makes them creative. It makes them willing to do things that immortals would never consider." She enlarged the image, showing scenes of human history. Wars fought with impossible odds. Soldiers charging into certain death for their comrades. Scientists working through the night to solve unsolvable problems. Ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of courage. "We fight this war with logic and calculation," Alindra said. "We measure losses and gains. We retreat when the odds are unfavorable. We preserve ourselves because we have forever to live. The humans do not think this way. They fight with their hearts. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They find strength in their weakness." Selenith studied the images thoughtfully. "Even if what you say is true, one mortal cannot turn the tide of this war. We have lost billions of our greatest warriors." "Your warriors are powerful," Alindra agreed, "but they have forgotten how to be brave. True courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in the face of fear. Your soldiers do not fear death because they are immortal. They cannot be truly courageous. A human who knows they will die and still chooses to fight possesses something far more valuable than strength or magic." The council exchanged uncertain glances. This was madness. The fate of the entire universe could not rest on the shoulders of a single fragile creature, but they had no other options. "Very well," Selenith said finally. "Choose your champion, Alindra. Give them whatever gifts you can. But know this, if you fail, we are all doomed. The void will consume every light in existence." Alindra nodded slowly. She already knew whom she would choose. She had been watching him for years. A soldier on that small blue planet. A man who had seen too much death yet still refused to surrender his humanity. His name was Marcus Chen. He was 34 years old. A former military commander who had lost his entire unit in a failed operation. The guilt haunted him every day. He worked as a mechanic now, fixing machines in a small garage, trying to forget the screams of his dying soldiers. He did not know that he was about to become the most important being in the universe. Alindra gathered her power and descended toward Earth. The journey took less than a heartbeat. She materialized in the shadows of Marcus's garage, watching him work beneath an old truck, grease staining his hands. He was unremarkable in every physical way. Average height, average build, a face worn by worry and sleepless nights. But his soul burned with something extraordinary. She could see it clearly, a fire that refused to die, a determination that defied all logic. This was the man who would either save the universe or watch it burn. Marcus Chen, she spoke, her voice echoing with the power of ancient stars. He slid out from under the truck, looking up with confused eyes. He saw her form, a woman made of silver light, floating above the ground like something from a dream. "What the hell?" he muttered. "I am Alindra, last of the Watcher gods. The universe is dying. Marcus, I have come to offer you a choice." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he stood up and wiped his hands on his jeans. "I'm listening," he said. And so it began. Alindra explained everything. The war, the void horde, the dying galaxies, the eternal races who were slowly losing their grip on existence. Marcus listened, without interrupting, his expression shifting from disbelief to confusion, to something harder to read. When she finished, silence hung between them like a thick curtain. "Why me?" he asked finally. His voice was steady, but she could see the storm brewing behind his eyes. "You have gods and immortals fighting this war. You have magic and technology beyond anything I can imagine. What can one broken soldier do that they cannot?" Alindra moved closer, her silver light casting strange shadows across the garage walls. "The immortals have forgotten what it means to truly fight. They calculate risks and measure outcomes. They retreat when victory seems unlikely. They have lived so long that they fear losing what they have." She reached out and touched his chest, directly over his heart. A warm sensation spread through his body. "You carry something they have lost," she continued. "You know pain. You know loss. You know what it means to watch everything you love burn while you stand helpless. That pain has not destroyed you. It has forged you into something stronger. You fight not because you expect to win, but because surrendering is not an option." Marcus thought about his fallen soldiers. Their faces haunted his dreams every night. He remembered the explosion, the screams, the desperate attempts to save them while enemy fire rained down from every direction. He remembered carrying broken bodies through the mud, knowing that each step was probably his last. He had survived when everyone else died. That guilt had nearly consumed him. "I'm not a hero," he said quietly. "I'm just a man who failed to save the people who trusted him." "Exactly," Alindra replied. "You failed, and you kept going. You lost everything, and you found the strength to wake up each morning. The immortals do not understand this kind of strength. They have never experienced true loss because they have never truly risked anything." She withdrew her hand, and Marcus felt the warmth fade slightly. "I can give you gifts," she said. "Powers that will help you survive in a war beyond your imagination. But I cannot give you courage. I cannot give you determination. Those qualities already exist within you." Marcus looked at his hands, still stained with grease and oil. These were the hands of a mechanic, a former soldier trying to forget his past. Could they really hold the fate of the universe? "What happens if I refuse?" he asked. "Then I find another champion. But the universe grows darker with each passing moment. I do not have time to search for long." He nodded slowly, processing the impossible weight of this decision. Every instinct told him this was insane. Gods and monsters and cosmic wars were the stuff of stories, not reality. He was just a man from Earth, a planet so small it barely registered in the vastness of space. But then he thought about the people he had lost. Their deaths had been meaningless, sacrificed in a conflict over resources and political power. If he was going to die, perhaps it was better to die fighting for something that actually mattered. "Okay," he said. Alindra's expression shifted into something resembling a smile. "Then let us begin." She raised both hands, and golden light poured from her fingertips. It wrapped around Marcus like a cocoon, seeping into his skin, his bones, his very cells. The sensation was overwhelming, a mixture of burning heat and freezing cold. Pleasure and pain combined into something beyond description. When it ended, he collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. "What did you do to me?" he managed to ask. "I have awakened your potential," Alindra explained. "Your body is now far stronger than any human. You can survive in the vacuum of space. You can heal from wounds that would kill ordinary creatures. Your reflexes and senses have been enhanced beyond measure." She paused, studying him carefully. "But the greatest gift is not physical. I have given you the ability to see the truth of things. You will perceive weaknesses that others cannot. You will understand your enemies in ways they do not understand themselves. This insight will be your greatest weapon." Marcus stood slowly, testing his transformed body. He felt lighter, faster, more alive than he had in years. Every sense was sharper. He could hear Alindra's heartbeat, smell the different metals in his tools, see the individual dust particles floating in the air. "There is something else you should know," Alindra said, her voice growing serious. "These gifts come with a cost. Your lifespan has not been extended. You are still mortal, still destined to die within a human lifetime. The immortals will look down on you for this. They will doubt your abilities and question your right to fight alongside them." "Let them doubt," Marcus replied. He flexed his hands, feeling the new strength coiled within his muscles. I'll prove them wrong. Alendra nodded with approval. Then come, the war awaits. She opened a portal, a swirling vortex of light that led to somewhere impossibly far away. Marcus took one last look at his garage, his tools, his small and simple life. Then he stepped through without hesitation. They emerged on a massive space station orbiting a dying star. The station was the size of a small moon, filled with creatures from 1,000 different species. Some had scales, some had feathers, some existed as pure energy. All of them wore the marks of warriors who had seen too many battles. And all of them stared at Marcus with open contempt. This is the champion, rumbled a creature that resembled a walking mountain of stone. This tiny flesh being, he smells like fear and weakness, hissed another, a serpentine entity with a dozen eyes that glowed like hot coals. Marcus felt their hostility, pressing against him like a physical weight. These beings had been fighting for thousands of years. They had earned their scars through centuries of combat. And now this soft mortal from a backward planet was supposed to be their salvation. He understood their anger. He would have felt the same. Enough, Alindra commanded, and the crowd fell silent. This man is my chosen champion. You will treat him with respect, or you will answer to me. The warriors muttered among themselves but backed away. Even the most powerful among them did not wish to challenge a watcher god. Marcus was assigned quarters on the station, a small room with a window that looked out at the burning star. He spent his first night alone, staring at the cosmic flames, wondering what madness he had agreed to. The next morning, his training began. The instructor was Korvath, one of the Kelfani warlords. His body was made of blue fire that shifted and danced with every movement. He carried a blade longer than Marcus was tall. I have trained warriors for 3,000 years, Korvath said, circling Marcus like a predator examining prey. I have never trained a human. Your kind is famous for dying quickly. Then teach me how to survive, Marcus replied. Korvath laughed, flames crackling from his throat. Then he attacked. The blade swept toward Marcus faster than anything human eyes should have been able to follow. But Marcus's enhanced senses kicked in, time seeming to slow as his brain processed the incoming threat. He ducked under the strike, rolled to the side, and came up in a defensive stance. Korvath paused, surprise flickering across his fiery features. You have good instincts, he admitted grudgingly. Perhaps you will last longer than I expected. The training was brutal. Marcus learned to fight with weapons he had never seen before. He studied the tactics of species whose names he could not pronounce. He pushed his transformed body to its absolute limits, and then pushed further. Weeks passed, months. His skills grew sharper with each session, and slowly, the contempt in his fellow warrior's eyes began to change into something else. Curiosity, interest, perhaps, even a flicker of respect when Alindra came to check on his progress. Korvath delivered his report with visible reluctance. The human learns fast, he admitted, faster than any creature I have trained before. He does not give up, no matter how hard I push him. He bleeds, he falls, but he always gets back up. Alendra smiled, looking at Marcus with something warm in her ancient eyes. That is what makes humans dangerous, she said. They do not know when to quit. Marcus wiped blood from his lip and grinned. When do I see real combat? He asked. Soon enough, Alendra replied. The Void Horde is massing for an attack on the Kerith system. 3 inhabited worlds, 200 billion lives at stake. If we lose, the Void will gain enough power to breach the inner defenses. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Are you ready to fight, champion? Marcus met her gaze without flinching. I was born ready. The Kerith system was beautiful. 3 worlds orbited a twin sun, their surfaces covered with crystalline cities that sparkled like jewels against the black void of space. The inhabitants were the Kerithi, peaceful beings who had devoted their civilization to art and philosophy rather than war. They had no armies, no weapons, no defenses. They had trusted the eternal races to protect them. Now that protection was failing. Marcus stood on the bridge of the command ship, watching the tactical displays with growing horror. The Void Horde was approaching like a dark tide. Millions of twisted creatures swimming through space as easily as fish through water. Their bodies were wrong, twisted combinations of flesh and shadow that defied natural law. They had no eyes, but they sensed living energy like sharks smelled blood. Defensive formations are collapsing on the eastern flank, reported a Kelthani officer, his fiery body flickering with stress. We have lost contact with the 3rd Immortal Legion. Pull back the 2nd Legion to cover the gap, ordered Admiral Salanith, her body of pure light dimming with concern. We cannot allow the Void to reach the first planet. Marcus watched the immortal warriors deploy with precision born from millennia of experience. Their tactics were sound, their coordination flawless. Yet the Void Horde kept advancing, sacrificing thousands of creatures to gain inches of space. They are testing our responses, he said quietly. Salanith turned to him, surprise in her glowing features. What did you say, mortal? Marcus pointed at the display. The main swarm is not attacking at full strength. See how they probe different sections, watching how we react, learning our patterns. They are gathering intelligence for a larger assault. The other commanders exchanged uncertain glances. No one had asked the human champion for tactical analysis. But Alendra stepped forward, interest sparking in her silver eyes. "Go on, Marcus. What do you see?" He studied the display, letting his enhanced perception absorb every detail. The gift Alendra had given him, the ability to see truth, was showing him patterns that the immortals had overlooked. The Void Horde does not attack randomly. Every creature, every movement has purpose. They are probing our eastern flank because that is our strongest position. They want us to reinforce it. Why would they want that? Demanded a rocky general from the Stone Empire. Marcus traced a line across the display. Because while we focus on the east, they are massing their true force in the shadow of the second planet. The planetary mass blocks our senses. When they attack, it will come from where we least expect. Silence fell across the bridge. The commanders looked at each other with growing unease. They had sensors that could detect a single creature from light years away. How could they have missed something so obvious? Selenith ordered a sensor sweep of the hidden zone. Moments later, the results came back. "He's right," she breathed. "There are over 50 million void creatures hiding behind the second planet. If they had attacked while we were focused on the eastern flank." She did not finish the sentence. Everyone understood what would have happened. The entire defense would have crumbled. 3 worlds would have burned. "How did you know?" Alendra asked, her voice carrying genuine curiosity. Marcus shrugged. "In human warfare, we learn to think like our enemies. We ask ourselves what we would do if we wanted to win. The Void Horde is alien, but hunger is universal. A hungry predator always looks for the weakest point, not the strongest." The battle plan changed. Forces were repositioned to cover the hidden approach. When the Void finally launched its true assault, the Eternal races were waiting, but the fighting was still brutal. Marcus was deployed with a strike team to defend a critical energy station on the first planet. If the Void captured it, they could drain the world's core and use that power to fuel an unstoppable expansion. The team consisted of 12 immortal warriors. 10 of them died within the first hour. The Void creatures were nightmares given physical form. They moved with terrifying speed, their shadowy bodies barely visible until they were close enough to strike. Their claws passed through armor like water through paper. Their hunger was so powerful it could be felt as a physical weight, pressing down on anyone nearby. Marcus fought with everything he had. His enhanced body moved faster than humanly possible, his perception slowing time enough to dodge attacks that would have killed any normal person. He wielded a blade forged from compressed stellar matter, a gift from Korvath that burned with pale fire, but it was not his body or his weapons that made the difference, it was his mind. He saw patterns where others saw chaos. He predicted attacks before they came. He found weaknesses in creatures that seemed invincible. When a massive void beast charged at the remaining warriors, its body covered in impenetrable shadow armor, Marcus noticed how it favored its left side, how its movements suggested an old injury. He exploited that weakness without hesitation. His blade found the gap in the armor, driving deep into the creature's core. The beast screamed, a sound that echoed across dimensional frequencies and collapsed into dissolving shadows. "Impossible," whispered Theron, one of the surviving immortals. "That creature has killed thousands of our warriors. No one has ever found its weak point." Marcus did not respond. He was already moving to the next threat. The battle lasted 3 days. By the end, Marcus had personally destroyed over 400 void creatures. He had saved the energy station, protected the civilians being evacuated from the planet, and held a defensive position alone for 6 hours while reinforcements arrived. When it was over, he collapsed from exhaustion. His enhanced body could perform miracles, but it still had limits. He was still mortal. Alendra found him lying in the ruins of the station, surrounded by the dissolving remains of his enemies. She knelt beside him, her silver light warm against his battered skin. "You did well," she said softly. "People still died," Marcus replied, his voice hoarse. "Innocents, warriors, beings who trusted us to save them. Yes, and billions more will die before this war ends. But today, you gave the universe something it had almost forgotten." But hope. She helped him to his feet, supporting his weight as they walked through the wreckage. In the distance, the crystalline cities of the first planet glittered in the sunlight, untouched by the darkness that had threatened to consume them. Word of the human champion spread through the fleet. The mortal who saw what immortals could not. The soldier who fought with the heart of a dying race. Other warriors sought him out, asking questions about his methods, his insights, his understanding of the enemy. At first they approached with reluctant curiosity, then with genuine respect, finally, with something approaching reverence. Marcus rejected the worship. He was not interested in being a symbol or a legend. He wanted only to fight, to protect, to make his short mortal life count for something. But Alendra saw what he could not see in himself. She watched him share tactical knowledge with Kelthani commanders, explaining human concepts of asymmetric warfare that the immortals had never considered. She watched him comfort wounded soldiers who had lived for millennia, but had never learned how to face their own mortality. She watched him inspire beings from a species to fight harder than they ever had before. The mortal was changing the war, not through supernatural power or divine intervention, but through something far more rare. Leadership, true leadership, born from compassion and sacrifice, and an unwavering refusal to accept defeat. Selenoth approached Elendra after the battle, her glowing form radiating confusion. "I do not understand," she admitted. "He is weaker than any of our warriors. His lifespan is insignificant. His magic is non-existent. Yet when he speaks, others listen. When he fights, others follow. What is his secret?" Elendra smiled, watching Marcus teach a group of young warriors the importance of protecting each other instead of seeking individual glory. "He cares," she said simply, "not about power or reputation or living forever. He cares about the people beside him, about the mission in front of him, about doing what is right, regardless of the cost. The immortals have forgotten how to care about anything but themselves." Selenoth considered this for a long moment. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "we have more to learn from the humans than we realized." Elendra nodded. The war was far from over. The Void Horde was still vast, still hungry, still consuming everything in its path. Greater battles lay ahead. Greater sacrifices would be required. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the universe had a champion worth believing in. 3 years passed. The war continued without end, but something had shifted in its nature. The eternal races were no longer losing ground. Under Marcus's influence, their tactics had evolved from rigid defensive patterns to flexible adaptive strategies. They learned to think like their enemies, to anticipate attacks, to exploit weaknesses. Marcus rose through the ranks with startling speed. His insights saved countless lives. His courage inspired warriors who had grown weary after millennia of combat. The mortal champion had become something none of the immortals expected. A legend. But legends attract attention, and not all attention is welcome. Deep in the heart of the void, something ancient stirred. The Void Horde had always seemed mindless, driven by nothing but endless hunger. This was what the eternal races believed. This was what they wanted to believe. They were wrong. The void had a ruler, a consciousness so vast it defied comprehension. It called itself the Hollow King, and it had watched the war with patient interest for 10,000 years. The immortals were amusing playthings, creatures who clung to their limited existence with desperate intensity. They had provided entertainment but never true challenge. The human was different. The Hollow King observed Marcus through the eyes of its countless servants. It studied his movements, analyzed his tactics, examined the strange fire that burned within his mortal soul. This small creature from an insignificant planet had accomplished what no immortal ever had. He had given the universe hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope was contagious. Hope could spread through the cosmos like a disease, strengthening the resistance against the void's eternal hunger. The human had to be destroyed. Marcus knew nothing of the Hollow King's attention. He was focused on the latest crisis, a massive void incursion threatening the manufacturing stations that produced weapons for the fleet. Without those weapons, the war effort would collapse within months. "The enemy force is enormous," reported his tactical officer, a Kelthani warrior named Verith, who had become one of his most trusted advisors. "We estimate over 200 million creatures, supported by Void Titans." Marcus studied the display grimly. Void Titans were the worst enemies they faced, creatures the size of small moons that could withstand almost any attack. They had never been able to destroy one, only drive them back temporarily. How many Titans? 17 confirmed, possibly more hiding in the shadow zones. The numbers were impossible. Even with everything they had learned, even with all their improved tactics, this force would overwhelm the defense fleet. "We need reinforcements," Marcus said. "There are no reinforcements available. Every other sector is under attack simultaneously. The Void has coordinated assaults across 50 systems." Marcus felt the weight of command pressing down on him. Millions of beings depended on his decisions. Billions would die if he made the wrong choice. He had faced similar pressure before, on Earth, in that failed operation that killed his entire unit. The memory still haunted him, still whispered that he was not worthy of this responsibility. But he had learned something since then. Leadership was not about being perfect. It was about making the best decision possible with available information, then committing to it fully. "Evacuate the station crews," he ordered. "Move the manufacturing equipment to secondary locations if possible. Our priority is saving lives, not material." "And the defense fleet?" Marcus took a deep breath. "We fight. By time for the evacuation. Then we retreat in organized stages." The battle began 6 hours later. It was chaos from the first moment. The void creatures swarmed from every direction, overwhelming defensive positions with sheer numbers. The Titans advanced slowly, their massive forms absorbing weapons fire without visible damage. Marcus commanded from the bridge of the flagship, issuing orders that adapted to the constantly shifting battlefield. His enhanced perception processed information faster than any computer, identifying patterns and opportunities that others missed. But it was not enough. The defense fleet was being destroyed. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Warriors who had lived for millennia died in seconds. The evacuation transports were barely staying ahead of the pursuing swarm. "We are losing," Veroth said quietly. Marcus knew this. He had known it from the beginning. This was not a battle they could win. But victory was not always the goal. Signal all remaining ships, he said. Maximum acceleration toward the nearest Titan. We are going to ram it. Vareth stared at him with disbelief. That is suicide. Even combined, our ships cannot destroy a Titan through collision. We are not trying to destroy it. We are trying to delay it. He explained his plan quickly. The flagship would engage its emergency power systems, generating an explosion large enough to temporarily disable the nearest Titan. The other ships would use that moment to break through the enemy lines and escort the evacuation transports to safety. We'll die, Vareth said flatly. Probably, but the transports will escape. The manufacturing equipment will reach the secondary stations. The war effort continues. Marcus turned to face his crew, immortal beings from a dozen different species who had followed him into impossible situations countless times. I am asking you to die with me, he said simply. If any of you wish to evacuate, there is still time. No one will think less of you. No one moved. Vareth stepped forward, blue fire crackling around his form. We have followed you for 3 years, human. We have watched you sacrifice everything for others while expecting nothing in return. If this is our final battle, we will face it together. The others voiced their agreement. A chorus of species united by something stronger than self-preservation. Marcus felt something warm bloom in his chest. After years of guilt over his fallen soldiers, he finally understood what it meant to be truly trusted. Then let's give them something to remember, he said. The flagship accelerated toward the nearest Titan, weapons blazing in defiance against the overwhelming darkness. The void creatures swarmed around it, trying to slow its advance, but nothing could stop its momentum. Alendra watched from across the galaxy, her heart breaking as she observed her champion racing toward certain death. She had chosen him because he was willing to sacrifice himself for others. She had known this moment would come eventually, but knowing did not make it easier to watch. The flagship struck the Titan at nearly the speed of light. The explosion lit up the entire system, a brilliant burst of energy that temporarily blinded every sensor in the sector. When vision returned, the Titan was floating dead in space, its massive form cracked open like a broken egg, and the evacuation transports were through the enemy lines, racing toward safety. But the flagship was gone. Silence fell across the command center. Warriors who had known Marcus mourned his loss with emotions they had forgotten they possessed. The mortal champion who had taught them how to hope was dead. Alindra lowered her head, silver tears streaming down her ancient face. Then something impossible happened. A small escape pod emerged from the debris field, battered and barely functional, but undeniably intact. Its distress beacon activated, sending a signal that echoed across the fleet. One life sign, human. Marcus had survived. He had calculated the explosion perfectly, ejecting from the flagship at the last possible moment, riding the shockwave through a gap in the enemy formation. The odds of survival had been impossibly small, less than 1%, but he had never cared about odds. When they recovered his pod, he was barely conscious, his body broken and bleeding from a dozen wounds. But he was alive. Alendra was waiting when they brought him aboard the medical ship. She stood over his battered form, watching the healers struggle to repair the damage. You should have died, she said softly. Marcus opened one swollen eye and managed a weak smile. I had promises to keep, he replied. This war is not over yet. She touched his forehead gently, channeling some of her own power into his healing. No, she agreed. It is not, and something tells me the enemy has finally noticed you. Marcus nodded slowly. He could feel it too. Something vast and terrible was watching him from the darkness, studying him, waiting for the right moment to strike. The real battle had not yet begun. The Hollow King sent its challenge across every frequency in the universe. A simple message, repeated endlessly, echoing through the void until every living creature heard it. Bring me the human, give me the mortal champion, and I will withdraw my forces. Refuse, and I will consume everything. The Council of Eternals gathered in emergency session. Some argued for negotiation, for understanding what this ancient enemy truly wanted. Others demanded that Marcus be surrendered, that one life was not worth the countless billions at stake. Marcus himself attended the council, standing tall despite the injuries that still marked his body. If I go, the void will not stop, he said calmly. It has been hungry since before the first stars were born. It will never stop being hungry. Surrendering me buys nothing but a temporary pause. You cannot know that, protested Lord Orvath, his flames burning low with fear. The Hollow King has never communicated before. Perhaps it can be reasoned with. It is not communicating. It is hunting. I have hurt its pride by surviving, by inspiring others to fight. It wants to break me publicly, to destroy the hope I represent. Once that is done, it will continue consuming the universe. Alendra stepped forward, her silver eyes meeting each council member in turn. Marcus speaks truth. The Hollow King fears what he represents, not what he can do. A mortal who refuses to surrender, who fights without hope of immortality, who inspires others through example rather than power. These things threaten the void's fundamental nature. Then what do you suggest? Demanded Select. We cannot defeat the Hollow King in direct combat. No weapon we possess can harm it. Marcus smiled, a strange expression given the circumstances. I never planned to fight it with weapons. His plan was simple and utterly insane. The Hollow King wanted him, so he would offer himself willingly, but not as a sacrifice. As a trap, Alendra would channel her remaining divine power into Marcus, transforming him into a living conduit for the energy of the universe itself. When the Hollow King tried to consume him, it would instead be consuming an infinite loop of creation, a paradox that would tear its consciousness apart from within. The risk was enormous. The probability of success was almost non-existent. Marcus would almost certainly die, truly and permanently, with no possibility of survival. He accepted the plan without hesitation. This is madness, Vareth argued when he heard the details. You have already beaten death once. Do not test your luck again. Marcus placed a hand on his friend's shoulder, feeling the warmth of the Kelthani's flames. I was never lucky. I was just too stubborn to quit, and I have to believe that stubbornness will carry me through one more time. The preparations took 3 days. Alendra gathered the remaining Watcher Gods, ancient beings who had stayed neutral throughout the war, convincing them to contribute their power to the effort. The combined energy of 12 divine entities flowed into Marcus, transforming his mortal body into something unprecedented. He glowed with inner light now, starfire running through his veins instead of blood. His eyes contained galaxies, and his voice echoed with the songs of creation. But he was still mortal, still human, still the same soldier who had lost his unit on a small blue planet and spent years drowning in guilt. That humanity was the key. The Hollow King waited at the center of the void, a region of space where no light had ever penetrated. Its form defied description, a consciousness so vast it bent reality around itself. Looking at it felt like staring into the absence of existence, an emptiness that hungered to fill itself with everything. Marcus approached alone, flying through the darkness on wings of captured starlight. The Hollow King spoke directly into his mind, its voice cold and ancient beyond measure. You are brave, little mortal, or perhaps simply foolish. Do you truly believe you can challenge me? I have existed since before time began. I have consumed civilizations without number. You are nothing but a brief spark in an infinite darkness. Marcus did not answer with words. Instead, he reached out with his enhanced perception, the gift Alindra had given him so long ago, and looked at the Hollow King's truth. What he saw surprised him. The Hollow King was not evil in any conventional sense. It was simply empty. It consumed because it felt nothing, because it desperately sought something to fill the void at its core. Every world it devoured, every life it ended, was a futile attempt to feel complete, and it never would be complete. That was its curse. You are lonely, Marcus said softly. The Hollow King recoiled, something like shock rippling through its vast consciousness. What did you say? To consume because you cannot create. You destroy because you cannot build. You are jealous of life because you have never known what it means to truly live. Marcus moved closer, unafraid of the darkness pressing against him. I understand loneliness. I spent years carrying the weight of my failures, isolating myself from everyone who might have helped. I thought I deserved to suffer alone. I was wrong. The Hollow King's hunger surged, its essence reaching out to consume the impudent mortal who dared speak such words. Marcus let it happen. The divine energy within him met the void's consuming force, and something impossible occurred. Instead of being devoured, Marcus became a mirror, reflecting the Hollow King's emptiness back upon itself. The ancient consciousness experienced its own hunger for the first time, felt the pain of eternal incompleteness that it had always inflicted on others. It was agony beyond description. The Hollow King screamed, a sound that echoed across dimensions, shattering stars and cracking planets. Its form began to destabilize, the paradox at its core spreading like a crack through glass. But Marcus was not finished. He reached into the breaking consciousness and offered something the Hollow King had never experienced: connection, understanding, the peculiar human ability to find meaning in finite existence. You do not have to be alone, Marcus said. You do not have to consume everything. There is another way. The Hollow King hesitated, its destruction pausing at the threshold of completion. What other way? Marcus showed it through his own memories, the soldiers who had died under his command, and how their sacrifice had given his life purpose. The immortal warriors who had learned to care about something beyond themselves. The universe full of beings struggling, loving, fighting, and finding joy in their brief existences. Life is not about filling emptiness, Marcus explained. It is about accepting that the emptiness will always be there, and choosing to create meaning anyway. For an eternal moment, the fate of the universe hung in balance. Then the Hollow King made its choice. Its form began to change, the consuming darkness transforming into something else entirely. The hunger remained, but it was no longer directed outward. Instead, it turned inward, consuming the Hollow King's own emptiness, filling the void with something new. Purpose. I understand now, the ancient consciousness said, its voice carrying wonder for the first time in existence. I have been approaching infinity from the wrong direction. I tried to consume everything to become complete, but completion comes from within, not without. The Void Horde stopped attacking throughout the universe, Without the Hollow King's hunger driving them, the creatures simply dissolved, returning to the cosmic background from which they had originally emerged. Marcus floated in the silence of space, watching the darkness recede. The divine energy within him was fading, his mortal body reasserting itself. He was exhausted beyond measure, barely able to remain conscious, but he was alive. Alindra found him drifting among the stars, her silver form appearing like a beacon in the endless night. She gathered him gently, cradling his broken body with infinite care. "You did it," she whispered. "You ended a war that lasted 10,000 years, not through violence but through compassion." Marcus managed a weak smile. "I just talked to it. Turns out even ancient cosmic horrors get lonely sometimes." She laughed, the sound ringing like bells across the void. "You are remarkable, Marcus Chen. I chose you because I believed humans possessed something the immortals had lost. I was right, but I never imagined how right." The universe celebrated its liberation. Worlds that had lived in fear for millennia finally knew peace. Species that had devoted their existence to war began to rediscover art, philosophy, love. The immortals looked upon their mortal champion with emotions they had forgotten how to feel. Marcus returned to Earth eventually. His enhanced body would last for decades more, but he was still mortal, still bound by human limitations. He wanted to see his home again, to walk under a sky that did not contain burning stars and dying worlds. Alindra visited him there, appearing in his small apartment overlooking the city where he had grown up. "The Council wishes to offer you immortality," she said. "They have the power now, with the void's energy converted to creative force. You could live forever, continue guiding the universe toward peace." Marcus looked out the window at the ordinary people living their ordinary lives, children playing in the park, couples walking hand in hand, old men sitting on benches, watching the world go by. "No," he said quietly, "being mortal is what made me useful. If I become immortal, I lose the thing that made me who I am. The urgency, the awareness that every moment matters because there are only so many moments." Alindra nodded, understanding in her ancient eyes. "Then what will you do?" Marcus smiled, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors.